Will that guy with the ginger beard stop talking? Because he's been everywhere. He's been in the arena, he's gone over there, he's gone to an Airbnb somewhere with Zach Lachard. You know, the man's been everywhere.
Change of clothes as well is rapid.
Yeah,
I've never seen anyone move so quickly in my life.
But yeah, it's me, Mike, here with Alex. We're back again for another game, and we're starting to get to that stage now where the top players are coming through at the top and getting those good records, and they're going to be facing off against each other. We're going to start seeing those high-level games now. Yeah,
definitely. We've picked out a really interesting feature match coming up for our round 6, I believe.
Yeah,
now.
round 6.
So it's been a long day, but there's still plenty of rounds to come. This one's going to be featuring a couple of decks we've seen already, but in a matchup we haven't seen up against one another yet.
Yeah, and the lists are slightly different, as they tend to be. Little cards here and there. There's one card in particular in one of the decks that we'll get round to. I'm excited to see and see if it comes into play. But what we are seeing here in Warsaw is a lot of players. There's over 700 people here competing. So there's a lot of players who have made their names in the past, coming back to play, it seems. And one of those is going to be in this next match.
Yeah, definitely. Alongside someone who performed really well at the World Championships just gone as well, finishing in the top 16. You know, both these players are playing not just for the crown of being champion of the first regionals in Warsaw. There is that glorious medal that all of our top 4 do get, and there's a winner champion one as well, but also the prize money that's available to them alongside some of the other prize support. It's really a fantastic event that we've got going on as we just about now go to our round 6, where hopefully our players are beginning to set up. What will eventually show you both our players. There we go. On the left hand side is our top 16 worlds player from this year's London's World Championships, Adam Hawkins, playing that Arceus Giratina list that he's been piloting for a little bit now, piloting to a great record, against Magnus Kalland, who's taken a couple of years out, but coming back with a strong performance here, playing Palkia Inteleon. Last time round, I think it was maybe around 2018, where he really performed really well. I believe he just about got top 22 as well, finished second in the regionals in Sheffield. So yeah, back into the game again.
Yeah, it's beautiful with Pokemon. People dip in and out of the game based off of what's going on in their life, but people always have that love for it and come back, and I'm sure Magnus has been watching closely in his time off and is excited to be back here on the feature table. Obviously done so well to get here at this later stage in the Swiss. So it's going to be Palkia Inteleon on the other side, and I mentioned about a spicy little card in there. I'm excited to see. I play Palkia Inteleon myself a little bit, and it's a card I've never been confident enough to play because I don't feel like I'm smart enough to know how to use it, and that's that rare candy. Can really accelerate the game state, and I never really know the right time to play it to get you ahead with the whether it's the shady dealings or getting the quick shooting Inteleon out to start getting those damage modifiers. But a smart player like Magnus, I'm sure, will be able to integrate that into his game plan.
Yeah, there's a lot of little utility uses with that rare candy, as you just mentioned there. The shady dealings Inteleon, of course, just immediately going straight to big deal for 2 item cards, or 2 trainer cards, sorry. But also being able to very quickly Aqua Bullet as well, potentially going first and on his second turn, being 100%. Able to get 2 energies onto the board and just start using a 1 prizer to start really forcing Adam into awkward spots. Maybe not this one, depending on previous rounds as well. I'm sure it might have come into use. But of course, similar to what we saw with Zach when he was playing Palkia Inteleon, he did have the quick shooting, but he didn't have the rare candy, so he couldn't really burst into it. So it'll be really interesting to see how Magnus uses this going forward as well. But yeah, just both our players just beginning to set up there. Really looking forward to
coin
this.
Flip there, wouldn't it? And getting things sorted. Did you see Adam's T-shirt?
Didn't quite clock it, unfortunately.
Clock that one when you come back in. Right. He's got a lovely Alolan Marowak T-shirt, which I quite
fantastic.
So check that one out when we come back there. But we have, like we said, this Palkia Inteleon versus the Arceus Giratina. You mentioned about the single prize usage with the Palkia Inteleon. That's why it's such a strong deck, is it's got so many different ways it can win matchups. With the increase of single prize in this Lost Origin meta, with Lost Box and with Reggie's doing very well, Reggie Gigas deck, having that option is key there. But that starter on the Palkia Inteleon side is not going to be what you want.
Not ideal at all. Magnus is going first. Looks like he won the coin flip, but has to start with that Crobat V, his one-off in his list. Does have a Sobble in hand, so does immediately go to the bench there.
That must have been drawn as the first card there. There's no way he's thought Crobat first. I'll put a little Sobble on the bench. That'll be good.
Yeah, we're just clocking onto some of the prizes there as well. Nothing too crazy on Adam's side.
My rare candy.
There's the rare candy on that
side. Oh.
Not much else going on from Magnus.
Lots
That's
of
just a pass.
Look at those. Magnus has got all of his key supporters. He does have good counts of them. 4 Irida, so 2 of them prizes, still options. But yeah, there's not a good start there for Magnus, not what he's hoping for.
No, definitely not. And Adam, I just kind of was clocking just as the turn was being passed over to him, just kind of enjoying that music a little bit too much. I saw that little head bop.
What do you give the T-shirt?
Oh, it's glorious. Look at that. I didn't expect that at all.
I don't think I've ever seen that before. That's one of the great things about being here at a Pokemon event, just to take a little moment while he's searching through his deck, is the amount of lovely Pokemon T-shirts, shirts, hoodies, merch is everywhere. And everyone who's in this Pokemon world loves it so much that they do get plenty of niche and unseen before clothing from them. And I think that T-shirt is just a great example of that. But the Bidoof going to be coming out that deck search from the Ultra Ball. And I think right now all he's going to be thinking is, how do I get an energy onto this Arceus and then watch the world burn on the other side of the table?
Yeah, definitely. Adam's just going to be very much just getting that initial attachment, knowing Magnus is kind of very slow at the moment. He has, of course, that Bidoof just benched there and just immediately plays the Marnie. Could look at sort of disrupting Magnus's hand. Obviously, Magnus didn't actually do too much, just benching that Sobble for the turn and passing over. Does find the Giratina, I believe, or at least has an Ultra Ball as well. So a few options there available, but just passes over. I think that was actually the V-Star, wasn't it? Which I just saw. So passes over. Obviously, Adam just attaching that grass, not able to do too much of that, but now giving Magnus a bit of a chance to come back.
Well, the VIP pass drawn on the second turn, not something you want to see. Now the supporters in play for Magnus. This is where those prizes of having 2 Irida, having that Melanie there, it makes a massive difference because if they're something you can get off the top, maybe not the Melanie because you need to activate that through the water in the discard, but especially those Irida, you know, you want as many chances to Irida early on as possible to start getting your bench full, get your Pokemon out, and get any items that are important to you. Yeah,
this is actually the first time Magnus is going into deck as well. So he's using that Drizzile with that initial small shady dealing, starting to try and find options. Goes for the Irida, as you mentioned, plays multiple or the maximum 4 copies available in the deck despite prizing 2 of them. Was already eyeing up the Capacious Bucket and the Radiant Greninja there as well. Has Quick Ball in hand, probably looking to get the Palkia down pretty soon, or as soon as possible, I'd like to think. Because it's going to be vital for him to be able to actually take some return KOs or knockouts himself. Just kind of making sure he plays this correctly, you know, takes his time, puts his cards into his hand. A lot of players sometimes skip over some steps, but it does sometimes just give you an additional few seconds just to think about what you're doing.
And you can see there with that whole Irida, from the moment he put that Drizzile down, he started his next 3 actions. You know, he'd already planned out what he was getting with the Irida, and he got the Irida, and he was already planning out what he was getting with the Capacious Bucket. So everything there was just bringing in step after step. And just making sure there was no hiccups in the journey. And I'm sure when he was checking his prizes there, was really sad to see the rare candy in the prize cards. Not that it's really relevant right now, but when you got any kind of one-of, sometimes they're quite hard to track, aren't they? If you have a one-of, because you can't count them, you just got to remember that they're not there. But players of this caliber will be pretty certain of their 6 cards in the prizes at this point. And finally, we see that Palkia into play.
Yeah, definitely there. So just kind of making sure, again, around his motions and sort of card choices and card selection. You started to see a lot of players nowadays also take their notepads to the table, which you're allowed to use, of course.
Yeah, Joe did that earlier on stage. Yeah.
So long as you're not writing in code and it's legible for the judges to understand, you're not just writing some mumbo-jumbo. It's a great way of trying to keep track of what's going on. I had the fortunate opportunity when I was playing a bit more. That town map was still available to be played, allowing you to just kind of put your prize cards face up, which is really cool. And then that way I don't even need to worry about it.
Yeah, Hisuian Heavy Ball, kind of a bit like a pseudo town map now with the ability to take a card out of your prizes. But that Crobat's still in the active spot. And we know how important these Crobats can be to the prize race, because if there's an easy Crobat knockout, then that's going to be the point where a player has gained the advantage without having to worry about hitting high numbers of these V-Stars and V-Maxes.
Yeah, definitely there. The quick ball is coming down from Adam, discarding that Psychic Energy. Looks like he's playing that. Oh, yeah, of course, Psychic Energy with the Giratinas, but also has a few different other cards in his list himself. Does play that Radiant Gardevoir, as we mentioned.
Not seen that used in a long time. I don't know if many players will want to try and use it. I guess in the single prize matchups, you might bring it out.
Yeah, it just causes sort of awkward scenarios where, particularly as you mentioned, sort of lost box, where you're kind of a lot of their time. They're trying to cram around early and maybe use a Snorlax, but that extra 40 reduction after 2 hits can potentially keep a Arceus V or Star actually alive and continuing to attack and progressing through the game. So there's a few different niche uses.
Same kind of thing on the other side with the Inteleon line, right? It's you've got the energy there, so it is an option available if you need it. For the most part, the primary attackers are going to be these V-Stars because they are so powerful and so bulky. But it can sometimes help skew the race, and you've got the Radiant Greninja, which sometimes gets used as an option, and is the main reason most decks have to think about playing Manaphy to avoid getting sniped by that. So
yeah, definitely. And there Adam does Crobat into the barrel engine as well now, so he's got a lot of things going on. He doesn't need that second Bidoof, and he's also considering getting rid of that Gardevoir as well. We mentioned the Gardevoir also has a bit of a pseudo side effect of being able to also hit through mill tanks, because obviously looking at the other list, otherwise Adam would have to be trying to attack with a Bibarel, and that's not ideal when you're having to do a coin flip and not knocking it out either. So that's not ideal. So
and the shred of the Giratina, the mill tank.
Oh, of course, yeah.
The mill tank has a rough time against the Arceus Giratina. But the key message there as well with that 20 damage reduction is it goes down 20, but by placing a Pokemon on your bench, you give the 20 benefit to the Palkia anyway. So it can reduce the numbers a little bit, but realistically, playing it down, it might not make much of a difference. You might as well just leave that bench space empty.
In certain scenarios where we see like Mew using Oricorio, it's an extra Pokemon for a Fusion Strike system for yourself. And because of the reduction, doesn't really quite help the Palkia player either. But yeah, I think Adam, because he's been able to Starbirth for that boss and the DTE and has the Choice Belt attached, Magnus has quickly seen that, if he scoops early, he can go to the next game because there was just that Palkia V on the bench. I really like this decision. It's something we don't typically see a lot. But as we're going through the rounds, we're seeing a lot of the top players really sort of think about how to maximize their usage of the time. So Magnus has been able to pick up on that very quickly, knowing that he'll be struggling in the matchup if he doesn't have a Palkia V in play ready to sort of return.
And that comes with that experience. You said he's played a lot in the past, so he's a veteran of the Pokemon trading card game, and decisions like that have not changed from back in the day. The decks, the cards have all changed, but the game sense and the time management is still the same. So these guys are going into that game too, and early finish that first one. Starting Crobat for most decks now is asking a lot of you to try and come back, because you can't then use the Crobat to draw. It's just sitting there as an easy target for 2 prizes. So Game 2, what do we need to see change other than that early draw right now for Magnus?
I feel like what you typically see with Palkia and Inteleon is that once you're able to navigate the first couple of turns, I should say, you then get into the swing of things because you have shady dealings and being able to then really sort of burst through your attacks yourself, and then of course that surge of water energies that you've mentioned a few times before from that Star Portal ability kind of allows you to chain attackers. He wasn't able to really get that going because of that Crobat start, because he was only able to bench 1 Sobble in his first turn. He went first. This is ideal in terms of a lot of this game right now, is actually winning that coin flip. So just trying to get all of those pieces and combo pieces together is what he'll be looking to try and do.
And so he went first, Crobat inactive, didn't quite get the Sobbles on the go, and so everything was going against. You need to get as many Sobbles down as possible for the damage increase on the Palkia, but like you said, all the Drizzle options, the shady dealing, once you start getting into that Inteleon, whether it be through the rare candy or not, you're going to start hitting so many of those cards you need. So we'll see if it goes a bit better this time. Palkia start, same start for Adam with the Arceus in the active. So this one should be a little bit more of a close game. Yeah,
definitely. And Adam, from knowing him quite well as well, he's even more. He might be even more of a veteran of the game than Magnus. He's definitely been around a very long time. His pop ID is very short in terms of digits.
Oh, I see.
Playing through from maybe he played from juniors, but he definitely played in the seniors level. Really sort of come to the fore in the last few years as well. Really sort of upping his game another level, top 22 multiple times now. And yeah, like I said, he top 16 World Championships as well.
He used Arceus there as well, so very familiar with the Starbirth method, the barrel Starbirth engine. So going to be comfortable here going into Game 2, but a little bit of this game is going to be whether the Palkia Inteleon hits its tempo.
Yeah, exactly, because he's gone first, and he's got the energies in hand, Magnus, and obviously just been able to get 1 Sobble out again, but has the Palkia active this time, knowing Adam can't really deal any damage turn 1. Could charge, of course, but we'll be looking to see how Adam will navigate this first turn, but also to see what Magnus might actually have in hand to be able to then progress through his own turns himself.
Yeah, just looking through the prize cards here. For the most part, it's cards that are plentiful in both their decks, but there is one-offs in both sides. The Echoing Horn on the side of Magnus, which could come into fruition here to get that damage output. You know, add another 20 damage to your Palkia, or maybe block up the bench with something that they don't want to put there. And then on the other side, we do see that Radiant Gardevoir, which we mentioned in this matchup can be relevant in terms of damage reduction, but for the most part is just clogging up a bench space that would otherwise be possible to use another card in.
Yeah, so Adam just being able to quick ball for that Giratina V does have the DT in hand, so can instantly Trinity Charge. It's a fantastic attack, even just without dealing any damage, because then you're just powering up your bench, grabbing free energies from your deck, and basic energies, just to confirm, to be able to power up that Giratina V on the bench as well. So fantastic, almost ideal turn. Maybe would have wanted a supporter. Did contemplate putting down the Path to the Peak, but you know, it's a bit of a concern when currently Adam may be struggling with his hand right now and may need access to Starbirth himself.
Yeah, that's the challenge with that Starbirth, is you've got access to it and then you have that Path to Peak to play afterwards to jam the game once you've done so. And so we do see that often with these ability blocking stadiums with rulebox decks, is they often interact with the cards that are in the deck, and you know, the Luminion and the Crobat will both be unavailable once that Path to Peak goes down. So you definitely want to save it once you're in a position where you're not going to get disrupted, once you're convinced you've got the energy on board and that you don't need to worry about searching for anything new. So smart to hold the Path to the Peak there and keep options open. Yeah,
and here we see Magnus go straight for the Irida from his hand there. He's put the Palkia, Origin Form Palkia V-Star to the top of his deck. You know, he does need his attacker. He does have the energy in hand. It might ask a little bit. He does still need several Pokemon on his bench to be able to reach the 220 HP of the Arceus V at the moment. Does have to think about a concerning attack from the Giratina V-Star if Adam's able to get that up as well. So we'll also be looking to try and set up another Palkia on the bench.
Yeah, and we saw earlier on when the Palkia Inteleon deck was struggling to find all the bits it needed with the Irida or with a Shady Dealing. There's always this option to bring out the Greninja and start drawing some cards, because there's so many outs to Drizzile, there's so many outs to your evolutions. So going for a Capacious Bucket plus Greninja off the Irida gives you an option to high roll drawing good cards. And that's just a bit of risk over reward, looking and going, actually, I can't hit everything I need by search alone. I need to start thinking about draw and search, and I'd hope I find the cards that let me search later on.
So yeah, there we go. He has just used concealed cards there. This does go into, it looks like the Capture Energy and a Quick Ball, so it does start to try and ramp up a bit more in terms of bench for him to continue his turn. It's just Iron Up, does have the Drizzile for that Shady Dealing, so he's just got to eye up which option he goes for here. Does he go for the Evo Incense? Yeah, it looks likely to go for Origin Form V-Star as well, so that he can start attacking. With that, gets the Origin, the V-Star, does Quick Ball for another bench Pokemon, so that's free on the bench.
Yeah, and I love the way Magnus just did that there. He seems to do this every single time he goes into his deck and search. He plans out multiple actions in one go. And if there's anything any of the newer players watching from home might learn from this, is when you're searching through that deck and you have a plan to do multiple actions, plan that turn out while you're searching the deck, and then start ordering those cards. Maybe search multiple options so you can look at them and start thinking which one you're going to go for. And then that way, if you do miss something, say you've prized it or you forgot that it's in the discard pile, it starts to catch out those mistakes earlier for these players.
Yeah, definitely. And there, you know, he goes straight for, as I kind of mentioned, going for that second Palkia V on his bench. Right now dealing sort of 60 plus 3 on the bench, so that's another 60, 120 plus Adams Giratina V on the bench, so he's only doing 140, and looks like he's just announced the attack of the Subspace Swell there, just I guess applying some pressure. The opportunity for Adam's side to be able to return and actually take this take a knockout on this Palkia V-Star could be quite difficult. Does have the Arceus V-Star in hand. Maybe that's why he wasn't going to bench that Path to the Peak immediately. Not too sure there's much else going on in there, though.
Yeah.
But, like I said, because of that Starbirth, he has the option to grab any 2 cards from his deck. And there we go. It looks like we're about to see it. Oh, he's just contemplating.
That does look like a nice shiny metal V-Star token right there.
Yeah, it's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, we've seen a variety today, and that's a little bit of the personal touch these players are allowed. Deck boxes, sleeves are pretty much just solid colours across the board, just due to the fairness. But then you do have this ability to spice up your own setup. And as we mentioned, that T-shirt, the Alolan Marowak, there is definitely a little bit of. I feel like all of these guys, just while he's searching right now with that Starbirth, all of these guys must be thinking before they go to an event, I want to put on my best Pokemon thing. Like when you think I want to look good at this event. What should I wear? But they have to think of the best Pokemon thing.
Yeah, that's very true. And it'll be interesting to kind of hear around Adam Sports. But, it is actually a lovely T-shirt. You do sound like you want one yourself.
I'm very jealous right now. I mean, you've got your little Arceus pin badge there, and I've got my Greninja. So there's a little bit of a rivalry going on here between our two pin badges. But that Starbirth, any two cards of your choice, you can search that deck, and it opens up so many options. And what we're starting to see players do more and more as they get more comfortable with the decks and as they start to have more consistency through the other cards is the longer you leave that Starbirth, the more outs you have later on.
Yeah.
If you don't have to use it, that's the dream scenario. And especially in decks like Arceus Gudra, for example, and it opens up the other V-Star. So throughout Arceus's time in the meta, we'll definitely be seeing the Starbirth be a last option to finish off a play.
100%. We saw Adam with that Starbirth. Did grab that boss's order, is playing that escape rope, which is obviously an opportunity for him to get that Giratina V-Star into the active position. Does play the boss for that Palkia V-Star, knowing he's going to be dealing 280 damage with this Giratina V-Star here. Does play the Crobat as well. He's just going to make sure he's continuing to set up his board, which is fantastic to see. Really seeing like a really aggressive performance here from Adam at the moment. Really sort of targeted down the right Pokemon.
And this is where you look at cards like Arceus V-Star and the importance of having a strong V beforehand where you've got that ability to use the Trinity Charge on those turns where you aren't able to evolve is so key, because that's what opened up this Giratina V-Star route and really helped out get ahead in this early stage of the game.
Yeah, that Giratina there, one of the prized Pokemon of the most recent set that we've had and sort of helping to define the current meta from Lost Origins. And just, using the 280 damage, discarding that DTE, which counts for the effect of the attack, which is fantastic as well, which is why it works so well together with the Arceus as well. I said as well, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
So just that lost impact, discarding those, that 2 energy into the lost zone really makes and really counts to be able to take such a big KO here.
And what's important as well is with the lost impact, you can take the energy off of the Arceus on the bench, the double turbo energy, so you're not having to remove as much energy. And we did see that part of the peak go down, so locking in any potential usage of that the V-Star from the Palkia. We see Star Portal used to surge that water energy into play, but now it's not just as easy as doing it. First he's got to find the evolution, and then he's got to start thinking about bumping the stadium. And the outs for that are not so good because he plays a path himself.
Yes, exactly. He does have 2 stadiums, other stadiums, just say. He plays 2 Lost City. Doesn't have enough sort of Sobbles and Drizzles out to be able to maybe chain and maybe get a number of combo pieces. Again, this is where we're thinking about that shady dealings chain that you typically would see through having multiple Sobbles on your bench. Does have the Lost City in hand. Yeah, that's part 1.
Opens up Greninja as well. That opens up the V-Star. And if there's any potential usage of a Crobat down the line, that's also available. So bumping the stadium first opens up a lot of options. Yeah,
definitely. It's gone for the attachment to the Greninja with the capture energy. Looking for the options that are available in his deck. Again, it's a little bit precarious just having one Palkia V or V-Star on your board when you're a Palkia player. So, yeah, does instantly kind of go for that Palkia V there as well. We'll be looking to try and find a way. Oh, maybe not.
Well, the challenge right now, looking across the board for Magnus, is Adam has a Giratina V-Star fully powered up, and there is no easy way for Magnus to knock it out. In fact, I don't think this turn it's possible with what's on the bench for Adam. So going to have to start attacking into it and knowing that the threat of the return KO is there. No Big Charm in the list for Magnus, which is what we saw Zach Lesage earlier utilize to gain a turn back by putting a Big Charm on the Palkia, just putting it slightly out of range of the Giratina if they can't find that choice belt.
Yeah, there's a Crobat for free now using that Dark Asset ability. Just seeing what else Magnus is able to sort of pick up from that, from just drawing cards. It looks like, is that an Irida? Yeah,
it is an
Irida. So another combo piece coming out. Does have that Drizzle available to be evolved into a big Shady Dealing as well. The big Inteleon that we could see to grab 2 further cards.
Or 2 further damage with the quick shooting, if that's the route that's needed. There's a lot of thinking here, but definitely playing from behind.
Yeah, no, definitely. So looks like he just moved the Palkia V-Star to the active position, to the front of the deck. But he's just mulling over his decision here. There's a few different options. I mean, he's just got... Is that double cross switcher or one cross switcher? He's got boss in hand. Obviously, you can't use it this turn. But there's a few sort of utility options here that he can try and go for. But of course now, because he's bumped the path to the peak, he has Star Portal as an ability available to him. So yeah, he does have a few different options. Can potentially target down the damaged Arceus already as well. So there's a few different options available to him.
Yeah, with the cross switcher can potentially stall out as well if it's unable to get a knockout. But as you mentioned, that damaged Arceus is a knockout. So to keep the tempo going at least, can keep in the game. But that Giratina is going to be a constant threat. And maybe in Magnus's head, he's thinking, well, if you keep attacking with Giratina, you're going to eventually run out of energy. And it's not the dream for that player. So, getting the Crobat up, that's interesting.
Target a Crobat. So this is a really interesting play here by Magnus. Just getting, is that a quick shooting Inteleon now as well? So maybe
if he can get another turn, that will open up the ability for that quick shooting to get not just 20 damage, but 40 damage.
Yep. And it starts to rack up as you start to constantly ping a lot of Pokemon down where you can. It's a fantastic option. Is that an attachment to the Palkia V-Star as well? I'm not too sure. I think he attached the Capture Energy to the Greninja.
Yeah, at the start of the turn, the Capture Energy came out on the Greninja.
I don't believe he's used the V-Star Portal ability as of yet. Something that we'll just have to quickly double check. But he's just going to continue playing here. There's the V-Star Portal ability because he wants to be using that Greninja attack, which is, of course, fantastic for him. But there may have been just a slight extra attachment there from the easy fix.
We'll get the judges to look over that. and for now, this is an interesting route. There we go. There's that energy. Good spot.
No problem at all.
Well, that's fair play to you. Have you thought about judging?
Well, it's one of those things. You know, you play the game long enough, you kind of just have to keep track of things. Magnus, of course, is very quick to understand that he did as well, and yeah, very very quickly sorted. Very easy fix, which is great.
The double attach tends to happen when you attach an energy in a way that's not typical, right? In that situation, attach the capture energy for the search, not for the energy attachment. So it's very easy to forget in those situations. Another one would be in the lost zone when you're attaching to retreat, and it's very easy just to attach retreat, and the energy's gone into the discard pile. You don't even see it.
Exactly.
So a very common mistake, especially with the added pressure on the feature table.
No, definitely. Like I said, it was happy to have picked her up very quickly, and like I said, the players have been able to very quickly notice that as well. So Magnus
why do you look so smug? Why are you smiling?
We just got to make sure that we're keeping the game as clean as possible. We mentioned about this. Particularly on the feature table.
Yes.
But yeah, straight back over to Adam after Magnus was able to use Moonlight Shuriken, a fantastic attack since it's not just having a great ability, it's got a brilliant attack as well, dealing 90 damage to 2 Pokemon on your opponent's side of the field. So just softening up that Giratina, sort of ready for Subspace Swell, hopefully, to kind of come in and take the knockouts when it needs to.
Yeah,
but here,
Adam, range. Yeah, and it's also the Greninja after that attack will be left in the active. And at this stage, a one prize is not what Adam needs. Adam needs to use that boss, which I think he might have just found, and there is one in the prizes.
He just grabbed from that Luminion, Ultra Ball for the Luminion, grabbed the boss out of his deck. You know, he knows he's going to have to try and target that Palkia V-Star. The troubling thing is, if he does take that knockout, Magnus doesn't have access to another Palkia V-Star because one has gone down into the discard already, one is prized, and one's just sitting there waiting, which puts Magnus in a bit of a tricky situation, especially if he doesn't have also a Water Energy attached to that Palkia V, because you can attack with it. It's a pretty good attacker, a good utility attacker dealing 200 damage, but this is going to be a little bit harder now for Magnus with no Palkia V-Stars, and of course with his own Lost City, that is going straight to the Lost Zone as well.
Yeah, and right now the only saving grace for Magnus is that Adam has used that that Giratina V-Star attack multiple times in a row. Lost Impact will slowly remove energy from your play, and it's not going to put it in the discard pile. It's going to that Lost Zone, so it takes away the ability to keep energy on your Pokemon. And at this stage, if that Giratina does get knocked out, then there is going to be no energy on the board, and so there's going to have to be a sort of rebuild from Adam. Adam's dream scenario here is that Giratina stays about, just one attachment away from a win of the game potentially, especially getting that boss off the prizes. You know, now the boss is available. And so that's the dream scenario for Adam, but there is still a route here where Magnus gets all energy off the board, and that would put him in a very powerful spot.
I'll be interested to see how Magnus can work this turn out, because he's used his V-Star ability already, that Star Portal, to sort of burst that energy onto the Greninja to use that attack. He could struggle to get an attack off this turn, because he's already eyeing up that Roxanne, and potentially a path from his own side. Does have to essentially almost give up a one prizer so that he can stay in the game. Right now, this Giratina's got 190 HP left after the Moonlight Shuriken. There comes down to Roxanne, so he needs to buy himself a turn. That's what I believe he has to do right now, because even with Melanie, he would only get 2 energies onto that Palkia V. And it does need 3 energy to use that Hydro Break attack for 200 damage. Yeah,
Hydro Break would do it, but as you mentioned, not possible this turn. And if he goes down to that one prize here through the Giratina, again, if he attacks through the Giratina, that's more energy gone. And we mentioned that boss was in the previous hand. The Roxanne might disrupt enough. So Magnus right now doing everything he can to disrupt the game and try and bring himself back into the play. So Roxanne, the smart decision there. Not going to be able to give up any 2 prizes unless the boss is searched out for by Adam in a successful way. Yeah,
and definitely he's already seen that both the Crobat and Illuminion are both down onto the board already. So whether he's able to get a path down, it may not matter. Adam just rips the Marnie from one of his 2 cards, or 3 cards, I should say, giving himself some more options now. But it does mean he's not going to be able to take out another 2 prizer, which does give Magnus an extra turn.
And in this situation, is he going to look to attack or wait? What's the smart thing here to do?
It's going to be a real struggle to try and leave that Giratina in the active spot, because he's going to want to try and force Magnus to either boss it up, because that's his main attacker and the only one with energies on right now. He could look to split some of his energies and maybe put one energy onto that Arceus V-Star on the bench as well, but he really can't leave that in the active. That Greninja's able to retreat. It's got a pivot option already with an energy attached. If Magnus can find a Melanie and a water energy in hand, that gives him an opportunity to just take the knockout on that V-Star in the active position. So
off the back of that Marnie, it was an Arceus down and a pass, so not able to find the energy needed to attack, and maybe not wanting to attack just yet. So letting Magnus take another turn, which is the whole idea of that Roxanne disruption.
Yeah. It's paying off. It's got that Evo Incense and ready to big deal with that Inteleon. Go straight for the Capacious Bucket and the Melanie, just as we expected, because he's gonna have to attack with this Palkia V. Do the Hydro Break, 200 damage. We've seen most players take prizes from the bottom. It'll be interesting to see if he switches it up, because that Palkia V-Star is at the top currently.
Yeah.
And if he follows the current trend, he's not going to be taking it.
And also the Capacious Bucket only able to find 1 energy left in deck. So the Melanie gets it from the discard pile, thankfully. So there is enough energy here for this attack. And, taking that energy off the prize is most likely the next outcome, we think here. So energy is starting to become a resource to think about here for Magnus, especially with that Palkia having to take a break after the Hydro Break. He's not able to attack during the next turn, so might need to retreat and move it around a bit, and so that starts bringing in the question of using the energies for retreating. So there's a lot of games still to play here, a lot of resources to manage.
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a really sort of intricate turns that we're starting to see. So Magnus does now have another Sobble down as well, so there might be more opportunities for dealing shortly if he's able to take this knockout, which we're kind of expecting to be able to happen. Magnus doesn't play anything like the training court, which kind of you would see often in a lot of Palkia lists. So opting for that Lost City, kind of trying to maybe fix a couple of other matchups. But yes, as you mentioned, it does put him in a bit of a precarious position around his energies and energy usage going forward. Adam's board, I'd be a little bit concerned about how it's going to be going forward. We'll need to try and maybe find a way of Trinity charging next turn.
Or maybe the Raihan might be the key there. That's another card that could be vital. I haven't seen it throughout the game yet, so it might be still in the deck, might be in hand. But that will not only allow to get the energy required for the Arceus, but it will also allow you to search for the double turbo energy, which might be quite tricky to find naturally through draws. So,
and we'll likely need the choice belt as well to be able to deal all enough damage to take the knockout. So there's quite a few things that both these players got to start considering. Magnus still obviously playing through his hand. He does play the scoop up net, bringing Big Deal back to his hand so that he's ready for the following turns as well. Would be very surprised if we don't see that Sob will come back down for Drizzle plays next turn. There we go. And another one. There we go.
All the subs are out.
Yeah. Who needs keep calling? But I guess it is a few turns in. But here we go. There's some free energies attached to the Palkia V, and using that Hydro Break attack for 200 damage, taking the knockout, putting Adam now in a bit of a scenario where he needs to consider all the options available to him. He's obviously got a few energies in the Lost Zone currently. Because of having to use that attack from the Giratina V-Star, does promote the Arceus V-Star here, so maybe looking for an option to maybe Raihan, as you mentioned.
Yeah, and we said about the V, before the V-Star, having to have useful outs and ways to get yourself in the game, and right here we're seeing Palkia V used. Not very common we get to see that Hydro Break, but in this occasion it has been brought in. So
that's a straight attachment to the bench Arceus V with the Psychic Energy. Immediately has to play the Juniper, and that's his third boss gone now. Doesn't play anything like Palpad, so won't have any sort of options to maybe gust the easy KO on the Crobat on the bench. Magnus is going to have to find a way to just somehow keep attacking with his Palkia.
And this is what we love about Palkia and Inteleon, is the options that these smart top-tier players are able to think up in a way to get back into the game, and the disruption that's available, and the order in which you can just pick everything out the deck with the shady dealings, and it's been done beautifully here with that Roxanne. Since that Roxanne's gone down, we're starting to see that comeback happen, and even though the V-Star was prized, still able to use Palkia's attack, but as we mentioned, can't attack during the next turn, so we will need to see a way to get it out of the active spot and back in, otherwise we will see a pass. And Adam gets another chance at building up an Arceus. Yeah,
I'm just kind of playing through a couple of scenarios in my mind. He's got that Irida. He's got options to maybe find a double cross switcher because he's going to need to knock out this Arceus with an energy attached to it. But he won't just be able to use Hydro Break by itself. He will also need other combo pieces like the choice belt. To really sort of ramp up the damage and actually be able to take knockout here. So he's just, of course, there's that Inteleon. There's a few actually more options than I thought. He's going for the rare candy play potentially.
That is incredible. That is unbelievable. Genius.
Yeah, with now having 3 Sobbles available to him on the bench, it basically means, often you don't want to be giving up a Sobble to a quick shooting. It's not efficient for you to do so in your game plans, but when you have 3 available and you're getting to the stage where it's the later part of the game, shady dealings for double cross switcher, this is a really impressive display here by Magnus, using not the Palkia V-Star to attack, but the actual Palkia V itself to be able to really sort of potentially take down 4 prizes here, which is going to be really impressive. So just targets down and aims for that Arceus V with the choice belt and the Psychic Energy attached. We'll need to find a way just to retreat as an energy in hand.
Does he have the scoop up potentially? The rare candy for
just pays the retreat on the active with
that quick shooting there will be enough to tip the Arceus into range, and he has the energy for the retreat. So everything kind of coming to plan here. That rare candy, a bit of a throwback to when Suicune was used with Inteleon, a very similar style of deck.
And I think Adam's seen the writings on the wall as well. So this is fantastic. We are going to be going to a game 3. Which means that we're locked in now at 1-1 for both players. This is fantastic.
Yeah, you're going to see how happy I am that rare candy came out. My goodness, what a play. Yeah,
what a play. We did mention it at the very start of this, that it was a great tech card, a card that you said you hadn't really had the chance to use to full effect.
I'm just not smart enough to use it. You saw how Magnus used it right at the perfect moment. It's very easy to try and just use it for the sake of using it, but actually it's all about those turns where you really need to accelerate into the Inteleons so that you can get things in range for the quick shooting, or if you need to get that extra card through the Shady Dealings Inteleon, done that beautifully there. So that was an amazing comeback there. There was a moment where I was so sure that Magnus had a very little chance of coming back there, but did so well. Roxanne was the key.
Roxanne was the key, giving him an extra turn, just to be able to attach one energy, just to pause and take stock, allow something to get knocked out if it needed to, but it didn't even have to in the end. Adam will likely try and change the slight way of how he kind of progress that game. He's going to want to try and use Bibarel to kind of stop counter those Roxanne plays as well, because he obviously wasn't able to get it out in Game 2. Game 1 he did, of course.
And it's the energy management as well, wasn't it? He had the game plan to win the game, but didn't think about the disruption potential with that lost impact, removing energy from play, got himself in a position where the Giratina was the only option, and through that disruption put Adam on the back foot. Let's have a look at these prizes real quick. So we do see a V and V star on both sides.
It's a little bit troubling from Adam's side. He did start the pumpkin and only has attached a DT to it and passed back over to Magnus, where for the first turn, okay, we know Palkia Intel doesn't typically attack going first. Going second on its first turn. But, this gives Magnus, this is your chance to now power up yourself and just get your board ready before I do, because there's no Arceus on that bench. There's no Giratina on that bench. It's just a lonely little pumpkin.
And I think Adam is obviously a bit annoyed right now, as you would be. Anyone starting with a Pumpkaboo and then not even being able to do much after that is going to be frustrated. But the hope is there's a supporter in his hand that he can start doing stuff next turn. As you mentioned, Palkia Inteleon not able to attack in that first turn for enough damage to get the Pumpkaboo. And then when you look on the other side, there's a lot of top decks, there's a lot of supporters that could be in that hand. And so the game should still be played, but the tempo definitely goes in favour of the Palkia Inteleon right now, getting ahead early on.
And I think we've just seen a Battle VIP pass come down from Magnus. He is playing a little bit quicker. He's obviously noticed that, the time is starting to wind down again. We've seen a lot of games today go to time. So Magnus is kind of just slightly picking up his pace, but, still being very sure of his choices. Doesn't want to make mistakes. Still a very high-pressure game. They're 4-1 right now, 12 points. Only 7 points away from making day 2. 3 points extra will go a long way if they can make it. But a draw won't put him out of contention either. So just making sure he makes the right plays here is going to be absolutely key. It'll be interesting to see what actually is in Adam's hand, whether we can continue progressing the game or whether he just might be stuck with a pumpkin.
I mean, it could genuinely be just pass, you know. And the way he drew that top deck, I do feel like his hand...
Oh, I did see a Marnie.
Yeah,
he does have a few options. Yeah, he has to Marnie. Adam, in his list, playing that typical sort of four Marnie, free path, as his, I guess, his outs to just stopping your opponent from playing the game against things like Mew. Draws a fresh new 5 cards. Does look like he has an option. He has a quick ball. That's something. And a Bidoof. Okay, so he's in the game at least. Just making sure that that Marnie goes into discard as well. Just got to double check what cards he wants to be discarding. That choice belt, we saw how vital it is to be able to hit the right numbers. And before gets rid of the escape rope, that pumpkin has a DTE, so can retreat as a pivot if it does happen to survive, of course. One of the key things from Adam here, looks like he's eyeing up the Crobat to set up as well. He's going to have the Bidoof on the bench. Did he have energy in hand? I don't think. Well, he did have an energy in hand.
Yeah, he did. Just the grass energy in there. And the problem as well with the Pumpkaboo and the Bidoof on the board is next turn Greninja is a possibility using Star Portal. So there is the ability to knock out 2 basics. And that would put him in a favourable position. But a choice belt on the Bidoof.
Well, there you go. We've seen the Bibarel come out before an attack, but here we go. Here's the Bidoof with the choice belt. Obviously, just wanting to draw the additional cards where possible. Has a quick ball and has a capture energy. So he's going to be looking to try and get 2 Arceus down, because if he does only get 1, it does put Magnus in a position where he could gust it up and find a way of taking a KO on it. So there's a capture energy. Of course, at this point, when you get to 3 bench, it's already very precarious for Adam. So going to the 4th bench won't or shouldn't make too much of a difference at this stage. So in theory, he really should maybe kind of consider it it does kind of force Magnus to maybe stretch a little bit further. But if that Arceus goes down, it could be really troubling for Adam.
Yeah, so all of the cards in Magnus's side now in favour of him. We see the powered up Palkia, 1 energy there, just needs another manual attachment in the next turn. We see a Roxanne in the hand of Magnus, and not many cards as well, so we'll need to start finding cards, whether that be through the concealed cards or whether it be through
that capture
Drizzle.
Energy he's just grabbed as well. Obviously it won't help with his attacking, but could always use Star Portal to burst energy on as an option as well. So it'll be really interesting to see how Magnus navigates his turn now, knowing all Adam has done is really attach an energy to the Arceus, which is normally ideal, but only on the first turn, because you don't want to be wasting this at all.
Yeah, looking to use that capture energy there for concealed cards rather than for an attachment, hoping to get some more water attachments out in the turn, and I think that will open up the Greninja as an option as well, potentially. Does have the Drizzle, 1 Sobble on the bench, so can find something. Yep. Just trying to work out now what that route is. And as we mentioned, they are trying to play a bit faster now. They do realise time is a factor. But thankfully, that quick scoop early on from Magnus will open up the ability to play a bit smarter and a bit more conservatively here and still have a chance to finish the game. So just thinking out, what am I going to do with this Irida? What am I going to do with the Drizzle? Yeah,
I think that that concealed cards might have put him into that Palkia V-Star and the Irida together. So two pretty ideal cards to grab just sort of randomly from drawing additional 2 from your ability there. Irida now opening options for combos and different pieces that we've mentioned many times before. We've all spoken a lot about shady dealing and just being able to deal here, deal there, and just do a lot of tutoring to grab cards and whatever cards you really need to be able to deal a lot of damage. And there we go, Magnus there with the Irida grabbing, it looked like, was that a Sobble? Alongside a Capacious Bucket, grabbing 2 energies out again, helps to thin the deck, also gives them the option to actually use it as attackers. There's the Drizzle and Shady Dealings, and for an Evo Incense, again likely grabbing the Palkia V-Star now. So it's all coming together for Magnus.
And he's got the Sobble for next turn as well down. And so that will start that chain. The typical Inteleon setup is to have 1 of each stage as much as possible so that you have all the different outs available, and then you can start doing that scoop up net chaining. But right now, everything needed to get the attack off, and the retreat will allow for the Star Portal as the option to accelerate there. Another advantage of the Star Portal is you can use energy to retreat and still bring it back into play, and done beautifully here with that Manaphy. So Magnus knows this deck very well. As you can see, he's got so many different avenues he can take to get the attack off.
I wonder if there was a slight concern there from Magnus, having checked the energy in his discard. Obviously, you want to make sure you maximize the value of your Star Portal where possible. Only 2 currently in the discard. I wonder if he was maybe considering the Greninja play, but now noticing that he's had to attach to Manaphy, he has to go for the attack with the Palkia V-Star first. Unfortunately, just having to use it to take out this poor little Pumpkaboo in the active position. Does use the V-Star ability there as well to get the Palkia V on the bench also beginning to be powered up. So we'll be foregoing the Greninja strat.
It's going to be hard now to get that energy on the Greninja, not being able to burst energy on with the Star Portal and Melanie's only working on the Vs. It's going to be a manual attach, and it's going to be very telegraphed over time there for the Greninja. So we're likely going to be seeing Subspace Swell, the avenue for the rest of the game, and just announcing the attack over and over again until the game ends. And that definitely simplifies the route. And with the Shady Dealings line here coming in usefully to get anything that's needed to counter the disruption from Adam, which he might bring out.
Yeah, definitely. And Adam here is just going straight for the Ultra Ball, getting that Arceus V-Star out, ready to potentially use Starbirth, and sort of he needs that DT, of course, to continue to start attacking, I should say, as a key aspect. Does have the Juniper, discards that Hisuian's Zigzagoon as well, used for that Headbutt Tantrum to sort of increase the damage output. But here we're just trying to work out whether Adam's able to draw into the energies and sort of save him the hassle of actually using Starbirth, maybe not, to actually use Starbirth for other pieces of the puzzle instead of just having to always dig for that DT, as we mentioned. Being able to use it for other things later in the game is 100%. a fantastic ability to do so. Grabbing those bosses when you need them, grabbing, a Giratina V-Star when you need it. and other items, or another energy maybe later for Giratina's attack to be able to discard, you know. So
especially doing a professor's research beforehand, that's 7 cards you're going to see, maybe even more depending on what you draw out of it. So the hope is you find what you need off of that, keep that star birth, but on this occasion was there as the contingency plan and will be used to power up the Giratina on the bench. The attack not quite knocking out Palkia, but it is damage on the board that could potentially come in later. For the most part, you do want to be trying to get those one-hit KOs in this matchup, and that's what he went for last time with the Giratina, and then got caught out through the energy management. Yeah, I think it was just having to react to the cards that he was drawing as well, which is a bit unfortunate, but he put himself in that commanding position and just couldn't then draw out of that Roxanne from Magnus' side. We did see from the Trinity Nova just the 1 energy attachment to that Giratina V-Star. I did see, I think, in Adam's hand a number of energies that he drew into from the research as well.
Yeah. You know, typically we'd see a 4 grass, 4 psychic count in a lot of these Arc Tina decks, or generally a lot with just Tina decks in general. So just only getting that 1 attachment will feel a little bit bad. Has put damage onto the Magnus' side, of course, sort of initiating that stage, because, you know, despite Magnus taking 1 prize, they're still going to have to be trying to take 3 KOs here as well, because of just kind of how awkward it is. We see Magnus here using quick shooting to target down that Giratina, put 20 on, so if he's able to try and find a way to eventually gust it up and take the KO, because he might want to try and use a fresh Palkia V-Star here, knowing that Arceus V-Star won't be able to take a one-hit KO on it.
Yeah, that 20 damage could be vital in 3 turns' time, and right now it does just seem like making the Giratina a little bit more reasonable to get. Recognizing that the Arceus with that big charm is probably a bit too far out of range. No way to deal with that on the side. Or Choice Belt will kind of negate the big charm there, but for the most part, it's not going to be worth it, because you're just going to have to 2-hit KO anyway. Yeah, definitely. And we've seen a few different cards there being taken out from the deck. We've got the Palkia V-Star on the bench now. We had a Capacious Bucket, all sort of from the Irida that sort of was played by Magnus there. I think he's had the Shady Deal already once, after having Scoop Up netted the quick shooting to get the Drizzle and Shady Deals into play. So now it's just kind of figuring out whether he's going to use this damaged Palkia V-Star to attack, which he does go for the Subspace Swell, putting the pressure onto Adam's side of the board. Now, maybe because he's seen that there's only 1 energy attachment from the Trinity Nova, that he might be a bit less of a threat currently. Yeah, if there was 2 on that Giratina, I'd be worried about the potential for knocking out the benched Palkia as well. At the moment, it's going to be a 2-hit knockout either way from both sides, and we've mentioned before at the beginning of the day and said that the current meta of the game is there is the ability to knock out these big V-Stars, but a lot of decks are putting in options to try and make it as hard as possible, and the Big Charm is a great example of that. Radiant Gardevoir, which I think got discarded earlier on, may be available, but these kind of cards are here to slow down the opponent and make it just out of range of the knockout, and in this case it gives you an extra turn, which can be enough to get you back in the race. Yeah, so we do see just an attachment of the tool there to the Giratina V-Star on the bench. I'm assuming that's a Choice Belt. But very shiny. Yeah, it's a very shiny card there, and Adam's just going for the Trinity Nova attack. With that Marnie, it does put the energy that he had in his hand back into the deck, which is great for him, because then now he can just charge up and put as many energies, 3 energies onto his board as he likes. And now has a Giratina ready to go. So Magnus is really going to have to find a way to target that down now, having also been Marnied out of his hand that he's been holding on to for a little bit. We're starting to see the time tick away now. I was about to say, it's getting close. We're getting to that stage again where time is ticking along. Once time is called again, we do have the 3 turns for time as well. Depending on when it's called, we'll see the 3 turns begin to happen. So it'll be really interesting to see how Magnus plays this out for the final 30 seconds before it is potentially called for all of our round 6. And right now, I don't think he's got much to do other than an attack announcement, but he's going to be thinking, what can I do to make it as hard as possible for Adam? What can I disrupt? How can I make it as awkward as possible? Because he knows that the return knockout from that Giratina is just around the corner, so he has to start setting up another attacker. So he's going to start off with the Drizzle. And with a Drizzle available on the bench from last turn, there's going to be the potential for Inteleon to come in. And there's also the addition of Palkia and Palkia V-Star in the prize he's got to start thinking about. So there's a lot on his mind right now as to how he's going to set up this next attacker. But we do see time there, and the players will now be thinking, what is my journey now? It's a whole different route to victory.
Yeah, so Magnus, because it is his turn, and if time has actually been called, we'll get that confirmed with the judge shortly as well. He'll be turn 0. That gives Adam turn 1, back to Magnus for turn 2, and then Adam for turn 3. That gives Adam 2 turns to be able to take 4 prizes, which Magnus can kind of mitigate by just not really benching another, not benching another 2 prize Pokemon.
Which he probably won't be able to right now. As he's got 1 Palkia left in the deck, and without the V-Star there, he's probably going to avoid putting that down anyway and might think to go down the single prize route. But as you mentioned, with the turn 0 through 3, recognizing that it's not worth it for the game will be key here. So we might be seeing a draw here.
Yeah, it seems very likely at this moment. We never know, right? This is Pokemon. Something could suddenly happen where another route of victory does occur. It looks likely we're going to see another tie on stream. But this is what we're beginning to see with this format. We're beginning to see very tight, very close games. A lot of top players picking decks which are very much, even against the field. And that's why we're seeing a lot of draws, a lot of ties, a lot of games that are being taken from both sides.
And that's why the smart scooping is so important. And we mentioned how quickly Magnus scooped game 1 after realizing he wasn't in a good spot. And yet still running out of time here. And that came from that disruption game plan in game 2 being so key. And when you go for the disruption route, it takes a lot more turns. People do a lot more digging and searching to find their ways out. And so that last game did take a while through the disruption. Both players really did try and motor through this final game here. But with the big, bulky V-Star Pokemon here, multiple hits needed to knock them out is not going to make it a quick game. So that Arceus probably going to get knocked out here by the Palkia. But then, as you mentioned, no reason to bench a V. Otherwise, that will put Magnus in a potentially losing position. Yeah,
exactly. And so Magnus has probably already understood that. He has 5 prizes still to take in this game 3. It would have been really interesting to see how this would have played out if we were able to go a bit longer. But Magnus in this current turn 0 and on his on this second turn, which will be turn 2, wouldn't be able to take 5 prizes from this situation.
Yeah.
So he does just evolve up the quick shooting there as well. So just kind of giving himself a few other things are going on. He does take the knockout, takes the 2 prizes from the Arceus V-Star. Down to 3. This is now turn 1. It'd be interesting to see how what else Adam could do from this stage.
Very nicely put out there by Magnus with the dice.
Yep.
So you guys can see whose turn is whose. And one thing I would say, and obviously these players know the decks inside out, there is a small chance there's a card that you're not thinking of on the opposition side that could come in and catch you off guard, right? And in this case, there's very few options that either of these decks would play. The only thing I was thinking, maybe an Echoing Horn that they might not know about, could potentially bring a Pokemon to the bench. But because of the lack of spread beyond 90 damage with the Greninja, everything on the side of Adam is safe from getting knocked out. So, yeah, there's no way to take multiple prizes in a turn. And that's where the key right now is both players will be aware of what they need to do to get the knockout. So that Giratina V-Star move, and I think Adam's gesturing, is it even worth playing?
There we go. There's the handshake.
There's the draw.
Both players aware of exactly what's going on, that both players weren't going to be able to finish that game 3, so it's going straight back to us now after having seen another riveting game between 2 of the very popular decks, 2 very top decks right now in the meta as we're going and approaching the end of it.
Yeah, and I think the 2 decks have unique approaches in the sense that Arceus, Giratina, once you get that Starbirth out, you're in business. On the other side, once you get that Antelion chain down, you're in business. Both of them hitting good numbers, but sometimes struggling to hit that one-hit knockout, and especially with Big Charm about, with VMAXs about. So they do need to find ways to get that early tempo going, and just sometimes lacking those first few turns, because as we mentioned, it requires that Starbirth or Inteleon chain to be started before you start feeling consistent. So it can be a bit slow starters.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Starbirth does give Adam a lot of options playing that kind of Arceus type deck. wasn't able to get things like the barrel down for game 2, which could have proved, vital for him to be able to then get the energies to actually take further knockouts with the Giratina V, or Giratina V-Star, I should say. But yeah, Magnus again showcasing the pure strength of just Palkia and how good that deck is. There's multiple different routes to go down, depending on the attackers as well. The star of the show at this point would have been Palkia V. He probably attacked more with Palkia V and taken more prizes with it. It feels like
Hydro Break coming in with the 200 for 3 water energy there. And I think that's the key you mentioned. There's so many different routes you can take, and the disruption route ended up being the game 2 winner, Roxanne coming in, making it hard for that Giratina to power up again. And then we saw Arceus just never getting to that stage where they could Trinity Nova. So in the end, it went to the draw. I think a fair result, and I think there's a lot of decks right now that are 50-50 in the way they play out. So much is decided in those first turns, so we're going to hopefully see more games coming up after this break where that first turn will hopefully go good for both sides.